Hi, I'm Miss Sarah, and this is At Home Makerspace, where every week I show you how to make fun projects with things you can find at home. Did you know that April is National Kite Month? April is a great time to fly kites because the weather is often quite windy. In today's video, I'll be showing you two simple kites that you can build. Then we'll do an experiment to see how long our kite tail should be to make our kites fly the best they can. We've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. While researching this video, I made and tested lots of different kites, looking for ones that worked well and were easy to make. I ended up finding two that I'll be sharing with you today. And if you can make a simple paper airplane, you can make these kites. Now the first one I wanted to show you is this one, which is a folded paper kite. You'll need a piece of cardstock, some tape, a hole punch, some string, and a sturdy straw. To test if it's sturdy, hold it between two hands and give it a wiggle. If it doesn't bend, it's sturdy enough. This is what it might look like if it's not sturdy. I'm using a thick paper straw. So to get started, we're going to fold our piece of cardstock in half. And we're going to do this by bringing the short sides together. Sometimes this is called folding it hamburger style. Now make sure that you give it a nice crease. And next we're going to be folding the wings. So to fold the wings, we're going to open it up like this so that the paper is at an angle and crease it. If I open it back up, you can see that I've basically made a diagonal line that starts about an inch from one corner and goes till about an inch from the opposite corner. Now I'm going to flip it over and fold this wing so it lines up with the wing I just folded. And give that a crease as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is put some tape on this seam. This will just make sure that the seam doesn't open up when it starts to fly. Okay, so I'm going to hold it in place and put a piece of tape down that seam. If you have another person who can help, you might ask them to hold the kite in place while you tape. I'm adding a second piece, and now I'm testing and it feels pretty secure. So I think that's all the tape I'll need to hold my seam together. The next thing I'll need to do is add my straw across the widest part of my kite right here. So grab a couple of small pieces of tape and we're going to lay the straw across, then tape it down to one wing, and then we'll do the same on the other side. Once again, if you do have a helper, they could help you hold everything in place while you tape. And there, you can see it's taped on. The last thing I need to do is to add a hole here in the bottom of my kite, and I'm going to do that with my hole punch. And then I will be putting my string through the hole I just punched. Now I'm going to trim it so that I don't have all this fraying end here. I want a nice clean cut to make it easier to get through the hole. Then I'm simply going to thread it through the hole and tie a knot. Make sure you tie this knot nice and secure. You'll probably want to make at least 2 or 3 loops because you really don't want your knot to come loose and your kite to go flying away. Now let's take this kite outside and see how it flies. Now, maybe you're wondering, what's the best weather to fly a kite? Well, you want a windy day, but not too windy. According to my research, wind speeds between 5 and 15 miles per hour are the best for flying kites. The day I flew my kites was a pretty windy day. I would say wind speeds were around 15 miles per hour. And even though it was a cloudy day, I made sure to check and there was no rain or lightning in the forecast. The second kite I wanted to show you is even easier than the first. It's this rolled paper kite. You'll need a piece of paper, printer paper will work just fine, a stapler, a hole punch, tape, and some string. To start, you'll once again fold your paper in half, bringing the short sides together or folding it hamburger style. Make sure to give it a nice firm crease. Next, I'll show you how we're going to make the wings of our kite. Start by grabbing one corner right here and begin rolling it down so that it touches this crease, and you want it to be a few inches from the corner. So once again, rolling it down till I touch the crease, but I want to be a few inches away from that top corner. Then I'm going to grab my stapler and staple it in place. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, making sure that I line up this wing with the placement of the last wing. It's really important that your kite be symmetrical and even on both sides. There we go. And if you're wondering why we use thinner paper for this one, it's because thinner paper is a lot easier to get that curl. Next, we're going to punch a hole here for our string, and we're going to use a hole punch to do this. But before we do, I want to put some tape in the place where we're going to punch the hole. This will just make the area a little bit stronger. Since we are using thinner paper, I really don't want our string to pull through that hole and tear the paper. So this will just make sure that that doesn't happen. Once the tape is added, I'll go ahead and punch a hole. There we go. And the final thing will be to add our string. So go ahead and find the end of your string, put it through the hole, and we're going to once again tie a really secure knot here. I'd recommend you do at least 2 or 3 knots just to make sure it's super, super secure. We really don't want our kites to fly away because this knot becomes too loose. And if your string doesn't come in a roll like this, you can make your own using a toilet paper tube, tape, and scissors. Cut a long piece of string, then tie it around your toilet paper tube. I'm putting this knot near the middle of the tube, and then I'm going to secure it with a small piece of tape, like so. Then the last step is simply to wrap the string around the toilet paper tube, and now you have a good way to store your string, a way that won't tangle up, and a way that's easy to unroll when you take your kite outside. Alright, speaking of outside, let's take this kite out and see how it does. If you're looking for a good place to fly your kite, try a large open space away from buildings or tall trees, which could block the wind or get your kites tangled up. You also want to fly your kites someplace safe. So look around, make sure you're not near any roads or any power lines. Now that we've made our two kites, it's time to talk about kite tails. A kite's tail helps a kite to fly more smoothly. So let's take a look at our kite flying footage to see which kite might need a kite tail. Notice how the folded kite on the bottom seems to be turning and flipping around a lot while the rolled kite on the top is flying more stably. This tells us that our folded kite could use a kite tail. Now, tails help to stabilize a kite's flight by adding weight and drag to the bottom of the kite. If you're interested in learning more about the science of kite flying, be sure to check out the link in the description. Now, on to making our tail. To make your kite tail, you can use ribbon or streamers, or you can make your own out of a plastic bag with some scissors, and don't forget tape to attach your tail to your kite. To make a tail out of a plastic bag, start by cutting off the bottom of the bag. You should now have a bag that is completely open on the bottom, like this. And now we're going to be cutting strips out of this plastic so we end up with some plastic rings. I'm cutting mine about 1 inch thick, and I'm just going to cut straight across. And as you can see, that has now made a plastic ring. And I'm going to continue cutting across my plastic bag to make rings until I have enough for my tail. When you're finished cutting, you can connect your rings together by bringing one ring through another ring, like this. Now take the loop and bring the other end of that ring through the loop and pull it tight, and you now have a knot that is knotting those two rings together. Continue knotting your rings together until your tail is the desired length. The best length for a kite tail will vary depending on what kind of kite you have, how windy it is outside, and even what you're using to make your kite tail. So I thought we could do a bit of a science experiment. I'm going to be testing kite tails of 3 different lengths to see which one works best. If a kite tail is too short, it won't stabilize the kite. And if a kite tail is too long, it may be too heavy and the kite will be dragged down. Let's see if we can find the right length for our kite. My shortest tail was the length of my kite. Next, I made one that was 8 times longer, and finally one that was 16 times longer. Which one do you think will work best? Make your guesses now. We're going to be trying all 3 out and see if your guess was right. First, I'll be testing out my shortest tail, and I actually decided to do 2 of these short tails. Make sure, if you are doing 2 tails, to place one tail on one wing and the other tail on the opposite wing so your kite is balanced. And when we test it out, we can see that our kite is still turning and flipping in the air, so it looks like our tail will need to be longer. Next, let's try out our medium length tail. If you remember, this one is 8 times longer than the body of our kite, and it's made out of a lightweight ribbon. Now this time, our kite seems to be flying much more stably. Notice how it doesn't seem to be turning? It seems like a tail that's 8 times the length of our kite does a good job stabilizing it. But let's see what happens with an even longer tail. This one is 16 times longer than the body of the kite and is twice as long as the last tail we tried. It's made out of a plastic shopping bag. Our longest tail also seems to do a pretty good job of stabilizing our kite. But I did notice that my kite seems to be flying upside down a lot, and I think perhaps the extra weight is causing it to flip upside down. And there are some other problems with a long tail, like it really wants to tangle. From our experiment, we learned that a kite tail 8 times longer than the body of our kite worked the best. It stabilized our kite while also being light enough that it didn't turn our kite upside down. According to some research I did, kite tails should be between 3 times and 8 times the length of the kite. And just to prove to you how valuable a kite tail can be for stabilizing your kite, let's compare our kite with a tail to our kite without our tail. See how much more stable our kite with the tail is compared to our kite without the tail? If you want to experiment even more with kite tails, feel free to try out some different lengths, perhaps 3 times, 5 times, and 8 times the length of your kite to see which one works best. You can also have fun experimenting with other aspects of your kite design. Perhaps you could try making kites that are much larger or much smaller to see if the size of the kite affects how well it flies. Hope you have fun experimenting. I can't wait to see what you discover. We hope you enjoyed learning how to make some simple kites. If you do make a kite and try it out, we'd love to see it, so please take a picture and share it with us at the library. You can do so through our Facebook at www.facebook.com/FHCPL, through our Instagram. Our handle is @FHCPL, or you can send us an email. Our email address is makerspace@finleylibrary.org. We have lots more fun projects for you this spring, so we hope to see you again soon in another video. See you then. Bye!